Congressman Mike Garcia joins me. I'm going to come back to the David Sack interview in the top of the next hour. Congressman, I spent an hour and some time last night talking to David Sachs of the West Coast, you know, the All In podcast, big funder of GOP. He wants us to spend less on defense, and he wants the Pentagon turned upside down, and he's skeptical of aircraft carriers. What do you say to the neo-isolationists in the party right now?
Well, I don't disagree that we need to be more efficient with the money. We need to be more effective with the
Go ahead.
Out of that now.
Yeah, your cell phone is cutting in and out on us, Congressman. You want to try us back?
I apologize for that.
That's okay. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I was just, I understand the sentiment that we've got to be more efficient with the money for sure. We do. Whatever the number ends up being, if it's $850 billion a year, it needs to behave like $950. But to cut spending right now, when we've got an adversary like China that's really got an unlimited military budget, they don't have a military industrial complex and then a commercial sector. They just have one economy that they fully leverage across all industries for their military. So looking at the budget numbers themselves is a little misleading. And yes, they're spending less directly on their military, but they're leveraging the private sector. And right now, coming on off the heels of 22 years of global war on terror, we cannot take our foot off the pedal when it comes to military spending. We've got to be accelerating it, and we are extremely behind China. Not just in terms of capability, and in some domains we have an advantage in capability, but primarily capacity and getting the ability to produce weapons at rate in order to meet this need and actually conduct a pivot to the Pacific like we've been talking about for 15 years. And get to the readiness and presence levels in the Pacific that we absolutely need right now in order to be.
Now, Congressman, David Sachs just threw out what is a canard on the right, which is our aircraft carriers are sitting ducks, and they can be taken out with a few missiles from China. You're an F-18 pilot. You're a veteran of every carrier out there. What do you say to that, to the people who say our carriers are now just sitting ducks?
Yeah, I think they're vulnerable to certain weapon systems, the DF-41, DF-21 systems. These are the carrier killers, if you will. But we do have defenses against them, and the offensive capability and the presence that the aircraft carriers bring is unparalleled and absolutely necessary. Now, we've got to continue to evolve the tactics. We've got to continue to evolve the electronic warfare capabilities and algorithms that we use to disturb missiles before they get off the rail and while they're in flight. And we've got to improve the defensive capabilities for the entire carrier battle group. It's not as, offensive an advantage offensively as it was maybe 30 years ago, but they aren't necessarily sitting ducks. They're extremely vulnerable, but they're not sitting ducks. And frankly, we can't afford to not have them. We've got to have that power projection from the sea in order to not only maintain a presence, but fight a war if the bullets start flying.
Now, my argument is that we've begun a 30-year transition so they don't end up like the battleships in 1941, sunk and out of the game. But that 30-year transition is to underwater submersible stuff. But we're not going to get rid of aircraft carriers. They're good for everything short of ultimate war, correct?
Yeah, they are the reason why there isn't war right now in some of these regions. And one of the, not just the biggest deterrences, but in the first couple of nights, that's how you get your power projected across, the ocean and across borders. So there's other assets. There's first night strike bomber capabilities as well as Air Force assets. But you can't conduct a war, especially on the scale of what we'd be looking at in the defense of Taiwan scenario, without aircraft carriers.
In the last minute, Congressman, out in California's 27th, what do they want you to do about Ukraine?
Well, I think it's not binary for sure. We've got our base that literally wants to spend nothing on Ukraine, and then we've got the president and his cabinet who are asking for an endless blank check, and we will do whatever we can to win. That's not a strategy. Saying we're there for you until the end, regardless of what's needed, is absolutely not a strategy. So I think what our constituents are looking for is how do we support them without it coming at the expense of our own readiness? How do we support and ensure Ukraine wins without it, cannibalizing our own capability to not only defend ourselves against China, but defend our allies in the Pacific region against China. And so, there's a number in there, but it's primarily about oversight and accountability and making sure that the weapon systems that we send are being used correctly, that the dollars, if sent, are accounted for, and there's oversight from our end. And there just isn't enough of that right now. And we do need more accountability and oversight as to what's going on. I don't think the average American knows who's winning the war in Ukraine or even what's going on. I don't think the average member of Congress really understands what's going on in Ukraine. So this executive branch has not briefed the American people on what is going on in Ukraine. And at the same time, he's saying he wants whatever's necessary to make sure that they win. And we can't necessarily afford whatever is necessary for Ukraine.
Well and truly put. Congressman Mike Garcia, follow him on Twitter, or the site formerly known as Twitter, at Rep. Mike Garcia, one of California's great congressmen. Thank you, Congressman.